Thank you for coming tonight. This is a information session just about what we'd like to propose for next year, and it's with regards to multi-age, and so something that you may or may not have heard of before, and if you did hear about it, just make sure it's the right information. The definitions. So what we call multi-age might be, the government might call it multi-level. Otherwise there's multi-grade. This refers to student-centered classroom that students learn across two or more grades over 2 or more years with the same teacher. So there's a different concept where right now what we have is one classroom, one teacher, 1 year. This would be one teacher for 2 years, and the student-centered part of it, typically it's curriculum-driven normally, right? So in the year I have to teach you all of this stuff in the given year. In the student-centered model, it's what do you know, okay? And so we have to get you to what you know to what you have to know. And there's basically a 2-year period in which we just have to get you there. And so if you're a little weak on this, we encourage you, we can work on that. Versus if we don't get this done at this certain time, that's it, we're done. That's your grade, we're never gonna visit it again. We did fractions, that's all. You couldn't do any more fractions, or that's your mark on fractions. We're gonna leave it, we're gonna have to move on now. So it's a little bit different concept than what you'd be used to. So what would OLV look like if we had these combined classes? So we would have a 1-2, a 3-4, a 5-6, and ideally we'd have 7 and 8 split with some classes swapping. So the grade 8 teacher might do grade 7 and 8 social studies. So next year we would have 2 classes of grade 1-2. We'd have 2 classes of 3-4, and we'd have only 1 class of 5-6 because of not enough kids. So once again, the students would be with the same teacher for 2 years. When the grade transition from one teacher to another, we can mix the classes. The benefit of this is that, not to say that we have it, but bullying, for instance, or mean people in the class. Well, if you're in the same class with the same kids for 8 years, you have to deal with that same student for 8 years. If we're able to mix it up every 2 years, we can mix up the students so that you're not always with the same kids all the time. And that goes usually in springtime about this time, we'd sit down with students, we'd ask them questions like, who do you work well with? Who don't you work well with? And who would you like to work with? And so by asking these questions, we could find out if pairing of students is a good idea or not. And so thinking about next year, well, maybe we'll put these students together in one class because they would like to work together, or they would work well together. Or these students don't work well together, we should separate them into 2 different classes. So every 2 years, it would be an evaluation, see, well, what can the kids do? Can the kids be in a better classroom environment? And of course, the idea is that, and there's a misconception, especially when I handed out the survey, a lot of people who didn't approve of this had the concept that we would be teaching 2 curriculums at the same time to 2 groups, which is not the case. That's actually what we currently do now. When we merge a class, we kind of have to do 2 curriculums at once and split the class up. Versus this one, no, you would get it for 2 years. So 1 year, and I'll explain that later. In 1 year, you would have grade 1 curriculum. The next year, you would have grade 2. And when the new kids come in, they would get grade 1, and versus every year you would switch. So benefits for students. I know this might be a little small for you, but teachers plan for students rather than focus on delivering. So once again, it's about where are you as a student and what can I help you with, versus we got to get through this spelling book right away. So if you're not done chapter 9, it doesn't matter if you don't know the words or not. We're just going to move on. Students are grouped by ability. So instead of grouping by grade, you can group them by ability. It doesn't matter about what grade. There's less competition because the group that you're in, or the people that you're in, it's not a grade based. And until you get to marks in grade 7 and 8 where there's percentages, there really is no competition between people. And of course with that competition comes with the social, emotional, and self-esteem, that if somebody's always bragging about how good they did, well, it doesn't make you feel good. Not that we're trying to get away from competition, it's just something about, we understand that there's a social, emotional need in the school that's greater than academics. Teachers can help groups of people, not individuals. So if she's broken the class up into 4 groups, and she knows that one group needs a lot of help, well, she can dedicate her time with that one group, which is helping like 4 people out, instead of having to go from one desk to another desk to another desk to help those people out. And the idea about multi-age is that you do group people, and if you don't group people, then you're looking at 20 individual groups as opposed to like a group of 4. So anyways, once again, with the group idea, you can better cater your class and cater their need. As mentioned before, students are always stuck with the same people. There's going to be less anxiety, less stress between class from year to year. Since you have a teacher for 2 years, when you come in September, well, you already know the teacher and you know her expectations. And if you know her expectations, then there's nothing really to be unfamiliar with. And as long as there's a good relationship with the teacher and student, then the next year is going to come in a lot easier. Students will learn from the older students. And so this was a misconception a lot of times, because people thought that this was older, the students teaching the younger ones. But it's not just about teaching them, it's about behavior. If you're with kids that are older than you and have been in the classroom already for a year, they just kind of look to the upper kids to show them direction, how to line up, what do we do now, where are the books located, how does this group work. So the older kids can mentor, not necessarily teach, but just show them a general thing. And a lot of times younger kids who might have behavioral problems, well, when they're in class with older kids, they usually behave a lot better. And so because of that, you have maturity and you have behavior. And it's also shown that language, for those who have many kids, if you have several older kids, the younger kid picks up language a lot easier because you hear it all the time. When you're with bigger kids, well, they use different language. They use more mature language, a higher level of language. And so the little kids pick up on that. And so they develop a better language set of skills. So benefits for the teachers. Well, if we have a 1-2, 1-2, that means 2 teachers can collaborate, get together, talk about things, and so they can collaborate. And with that becomes greater ideas, better knowledge, way to help each other out. Able to teach a wide range of abilities more easily. So once again, in a class we have a spectrum of ability. People who are not really good, people who are really good, people who struggle, and people that are very independent. And so when we talk about the range of abilities, well, it doesn't matter if we mix 2 grades together or we blend 2 grades together. The fact is we still have a spectrum of ability. Grade 1 kids can do work that's maybe at a grade 3 level. And you have some people in grade 1 that maybe can't even print very well. And so this is the spectrum of ability. So it doesn't really matter if you put 2 grades together. Once again, groups are based on ability, not grades. So it doesn't matter about grades, it's about ability. Teachers can know which groups need help. As I said before, if there's 4 groups, teachers know which ones struggle, and so easily can pull groups and talk about them. Classrooms are more balanced out. So some people did have an issue with, the school would use this to balance out classrooms. And they say, well, that means you're just going to put more kids in a room. And that might be true, but the idea that, next year, if I have a class of 21 grade 1s, but I only have like 13 grade 2s, well, one teacher is very stressed and the other teacher is a little bit more relaxed. But if you even them out and they're helping each other, better school environment, right? When you have one teacher that's stressed out, I'm sure kids know and can feel that stress. Benefits for the school as a whole. So we do split classes now, and it's not ideal. And I was looking at some of our pictures from like 2003, 2005, and you'll see there's split classes there as well. So we have a history at Our Lady of Victory of splitting classes, and eventually they break up into individual groups when enrollment increases. But that's not ideal for us, and we don't want to continue doing that because we struggle teaching curriculum, and then we struggle on what it's going to look like next year. And so it's a year-to-year basis. It's not much planning. People will get double curriculum. Some people would miss curriculum altogether. So, a lot of people would be concerned about the curriculum. Well, what we're doing now is definitely not what we want to do. So if we think to the future, staff will be prepared. It benefits students by having a concrete plan, a future action, like this is what it is and we know how it's going to work. Even if we go from one class of grade 1 to, well, it's still going to work just as well as if we had two classes. It's planned versus spontaneous. So right now we, at this time of registration, we find out how many kids we have for next year. There will be more or less depending on what happens in September. But now is when we know sort of what we should be looking for the future. And so now planning it again, only year by year, is not a good idea. And so, of course, once again, balancing classes to reduce stress between teachers, as well as students. Who wants to be in a class of 25 rowling kids? I'd rather be in a class of 20 maintained kids. So what does the research say? And this is what the school is going for. You know, a lot of times we have gut feelings, and what we think or what we feel is what's best. We try to get away from that, and we say, well, what does the research show? People have done the research. What do they say that's right? And so students learn the same, if not better, compared to a traditional single grade classroom. So there has not been any evidence that they learn less. If anything, it's at the same level or better. So the better environment for classrooms that have a wide range of ability. And at our school, our demographics, we have a wide range of ability here. And so because of that, it benefits us more than anything. So it's for the student. Deliberately formed multi-level classrooms emphasize a continuum of learning. And so what this means is our Manitoba curriculum is kind of like a spiral staircase. So we touch on Vikings here, and then we touch on our Canada history. And then later in high school, we touch on it again. We talk about ancient cultures and history, so Vikings again. And we go deeper into our Canadian history and very specific moments in history. So it's a spiral curriculum, and so people have to realize sometimes curriculum is missed, and that's okay because it comes back again. And with regards to math, when we emphasize the math part, every year you learn the same thing, just a different level of difficulty, right? You always do addition. Like through everything you do addition. In the early grades, it's maybe single digit by single digit. The next year it'll be double. Let's go in grade 1, single digit by single digit. Grade 2, 2 digit by 2 digit. Grade 3 would be 3 digit by, and it goes on, right? And so it just gets harder and harder. And every so often we add new concepts like grade 4 multiplication, right? And so grade 3 I think you do grouping. Grade 4 you do multiplication. Grade 5 it's multiplication by 2 digit by 1 digit. Or 2 digit by 2 digit, and so it always increases. And so there's this continuum, just like how we're trying to do like grade 1 to 2, 2 to or like 3 to 4. When we have deliberately done this, we can educate and teach the kids on this curriculum and on this continuum. Many school divisions have multi-age schools for philosophical reasons, as well as practical reasons. So I've been in talks with Leanne Mitz, who's part of the L'Oreal School Division, and she is a principal that her philosophy, she thinks that multi-age is the right thing to do, but she also is doing it at her school because there's not enough kids in her area, so they have to merge classrooms. So now that I think they have about 240 kids, maybe 250 kids, and so they've merged for the reason because they don't have enough kids. But there's also other reasons, because the philosophical point is the research, that the research shows that it works. The Manitoba government supports this. So the Manitoba government has a document called Independent Together. So they have a document that tells schools what to do and why to do it. So if they're interested in doing it, they can. So the Manitoba government supports this, and many school divisions like St. James, like L'Oreal, also do it as well. So in the classroom, so what would change in the classroom? So let's find out. We would see more group work, possibly, not just individual seat work, but there'd be more group work. Less teacher-directed instruction. So instead of me talking like I am now, instead of like for 15 minutes, I would talk for a brief 5 minutes, get people working on groups, and then I would pull that group that I need, and I'd talk to them about it a little bit more. Then I would check on another group, and I'd talk to them a little more. So instead of me talking for 10-15 minutes, not knowing if those kids understand or not, I am doing it for a lot shorter times. They're working a lot more. In those groups, the peers, the students themselves, because they're grouped by ability, they talk at the same level, they understand at the same level. So it's not somebody saying something above their head. They can all discuss it, and I think they'll all get it. More projects, more work centers or stations. So, for instance, math concepts. Today they're doing place value. So I'll have a whole bunch of things like flashcards, little games that they can all play. And so they all play little games, and every so often I'll bring one or two students, those that needs direct teacher instruction and practice. I get them to practice. While everybody else is practicing on their place value, I can pull kids who need real help. And so while these are doing stations or doing something else in groups, I can pull them again. Integrated curriculum. So a typical day in a single grade classroom, like in grade 7, might be math for 40 minutes, then social studies, then science, ELA, and then it might be like JIT. So instead of doing that, it's more like theme 1 here, math, theme again. So when you do a theme, you group things together, like a big chunk. So you're talking about the fur trade. So you talk about social studies, the fur trade. You then talk about math, maybe. You bring in mathematical things that can be shown with the fur trade. With that, then you can also talk about ELA. So you say, today we're going to journal, what would it be like to do something, to be like somebody in the fur trade? You have to take somebody who's an Aboriginal, or you have to take the perspective of the fur trade hunter. So whatever that is, but it would be all integrated together. So it's not broken up in like math, science, all those. No, it'd be like a theme. So it'd be a whole section, and you group it all together. Differentiation, and I'll show you that on the next page. Math may or may not be integrated, so you can actually, because you have 2 classes of grade 1, 2, and 1, 2. So one teacher can pull out all the kids and they can just do grade 1 math together. Grade 2 teacher can take all the kids and they'll do or one teacher can do all grade 2. Or you can, once again, because math is this continuum, that they're just building on what they already know, that you can be able to do it in groups and whatnot. Curriculum rotates from year to year. So let's say every odd year. So we're in 2014-15. So we'll say this is an even year. So in even years, you would get Y curriculum. So let's say that's grade 2 curriculum. And odd years, you would receive X curriculum. So that would be like grade 1 curriculum. So on odd years, they would get, I mixed that up, whatever. So in odd years, you receive grade 1 curriculum. And on even years, you receive grade 2 curriculum. And so then we always know, like, that's just how it works. So you never really miss curriculum. You never really miss any contact or any concepts. They're just switched from year to year. And of course, it's not hard to ask the older kids to do something more. So if you're learning about animals, we'll say, okay, well, we have to learn about animals, the color they are, what they eat. Well, the older kids can go into further, like, okay, can you describe what a bear's habitat is? Or like, where do they live? And then they can write full sentences, more than just like a word or 2. So this is like the learning pyramid. And so this is, if I just talk to you today without a presentation, with a monotone voice like this, and for an hour I sat here talking to you, if I lectured to you, you would receive about 5% of that. You would remember 5% of that. Because I'm using a presentation, a demonstration of some kind, somewhere you'll remember 10 to 20%, maybe 30% of this. Differentiation is about teaching many different ways, so that it doesn't matter if you're a visual learner, an audio learner, if you're a kinetic, so like you have to move, that if we do a whole bunch of different ways to do it, you can, you'd be able to, kids would learn more and retain more information. At the bottom, at 90%, okay, which is a big focus and a big part of research here, when we teach others how to do something, then we ourselves are learning or remembering 90%. I keep talking about group work because it's super important. When you do group work, that point of which you can take over leadership or be a mentor when you teach others how to do something, because like you learn it, you remember it. So if you understand a concept and you're teaching somebody else how to do it in your group, then you're remembering it 90%. You're not going to forget it. Because right now we have kids that come over summer and have no idea what they learned last year. You couldn't even ask them, even at the end of the day, what'd you do today? I don't know. What'd you learn? Nothing. Yeah, so you know, like, and it's a point where transitioning the school into a place that is truly a learning environment. And here's Bloom's taxonomy. We start off with remembering something, and then we understand it, and then apply, creating, evaluating, and analyzing. So most people are able to remember the information. We hope so. So this is where, when you have, let's say, grade 3s and grade 4s. So, you know, I'm concerned that my child who's in grade 4 is going to have a dumbed down education, or she's not going to be pushed further so that she's not going to get any smarter. She's not going to learn more. Well, this is where, like, the idea of when we teach, this is part of teacher's job, is that we plan for this. So kids can remember, understand. Okay, so can they apply what they understand? So if you learned about polar bears, so in grade 4 they do habitats. So if, okay, so can you understand that a polar bear's habitat is in the Arctic, there's snow there, what does it eat? It eats seals, it eats fish. So then can we apply that to something? Can we draw something? Can we show you? Can you demonstrate it? So can you create a little diorama, something that's like a 3D model? Can you evaluate, like, what I did, my little model, is it accurate? Is it good? Is it bad? What is it missing? What can I have? And then of course that's part of, like, analyzing, right? Like, did I do a good job? Like, can I go further with this? And so when parents are worried that their child is not going to get enough education, then this is where I would show them, this is what the teacher's job is going to be, is to find an extended and find other things that you can do with the same information. Just make it tougher for them. Just make, you know, go beyond just memorizing that a polar bear eats fish and lives in the Arctic. What can you do with that? Can you show me more? You know, compare it, evaluate, and analyzing it. So you'd be like, compare that to a brown bear. Like, could they live in the same environment? I don't know. Oh, I have a 7-minute video. I can show you this now. It's basically a school in the States that does multi-age, and it's just the teacher tell you how it's sort of done.
All right, you're going to go down by those two and count off your 100 squares and write the planets. And you two are. Today I asked the students to model the distance between planets so that they could understand that scientists need to model. I have split the class into 2 groups. I'm calling them out like 8 at a time to do the activity. The other half are working on measuring the diameters on paper planets. It's not a multiple curriculum. It's not like a split grade where I'd have to teach 3 different curriculums. Right away I'm going to tell you that's the wrong way to do multi-age. Do not try to teach 3 different curriculums.
One of the biggest misconceptions about multi-age is that people do think you're still teaching split grade classrooms like 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It is definitely not split grades where all the 3rd graders come together at one point and then all the 4th graders come together. It allows for flexible groupings. There's both heterogeneous and homogeneous groupings going on at times, and it's a wonderful continuum though to really see the progression of students, but it can't be just a cookie cutter. It's not a recipe. Curriculum has to be allowing for differentiation and allowing for developmental levels.
What we've done at Ideal is we've developed a 3-year cycle of curriculum. So everybody's learning the same thing in science, and everyone's learning the same thing in social studies. And that's not just within my unit, it's within the entire school. So right now, all of the school is doing a unit on space at their own developmental levels. That's why we have that rotation. We can mix the grade levels.
So at the primary level, they will get just the basis of our theme that we're doing at the time. And then what happens is they will get it again when they move to the elementary unit. They will build upon what we learned in our primary unit and get a little bit more in depth with that same theme. And then they will again get that same theme once they move on to middle school, and at that middle school level, they delve more into the information. The goal is by the time they leave 8th grade middle school, they have really mastered the themes.
Company attention!
Generals, take roll call, please.
Corporal Tom Smart, Warren, present, sir.
I do not teach out of a book. I teach from simulations. I focus on American history from the very beginning of Native Americans coming here all the way to the Reconstruction after the Civil War. And I have a simulation for almost every unit that I have. It's all interactive. It's all them experiencing what somebody during that period of time would experience. And as you know, 5th and 6th grade, there are different levels of ability. They have different interests, different likes and dislikes. So some years I do certain activities, some years I don't. I pick and choose depending on my multi-age classroom to hit everybody's needs.
The textbooks are a guiding force, but they're not the driving force. I'm not stuck with the curriculum that's supposed to be age appropriate. We allow the children to grow and express themselves at the rate that they're ready to do.
I don't use textbooks day after day after day. I use them as a resource and as a planning guide. My role as a multi-aid teacher is to see how they teach it and get a sense of the developmental appropriateness of the content and the way it's written. A lot of our activities are now web-based. Our computers are completely integrated. And so I look for websites for the kids to view and multimedia to teach the same content.
And it's also so important with changing knowledge and access to knowledge, whereas textbooks, you're kind of stuck with what's there. We can have kids on the computer in every class as needed to support the curriculum. This has allowed our students to have better access to all sorts of information in order to master the curriculum.
We don't have it hit and miss. We have essential questions that we've developed for each level of each unit so that we know that we're coherent in our delivery of the curriculum.
You're constantly looking back at the Common Core standards and you're making sure that you're meeting the standards for all of the grade levels when you're planning your lessons.
Then I have ones that talk about what ancient Roman homes look like, sports and pastimes, and then there's a cool diary from a young girl. We just started ancient Rome on Monday. So in order to develop their background knowledge, I have a variety of books that are at different reading levels and different reading interest. The challenges are making sure that all students' needs are being met. You really need to make sure that you have materials available for everybody that will be scaffolded to a point where students will be successful.
I don't look at what a first grader has to know. I look at what do they need to know by the time they leave in second grade. And it gives the freedom for children who are behind to have the time developmentally to get to where they need to be. And the children who are ahead have the freedom to keep moving forward because they can go beyond what their second grade expectations are. There's so much more creativity to teach this way. It's a lot of work up front. It is. It's a lot of planning and it's a lot of assessing data and really driving from that. But the rewards are so great. When you take our children and they understand the concepts and they're willing to take it to different levels and they get multiple ways to show you what they know through their portfolios, their projects, their written assessments, their formal assessments, and you're getting consistent data no matter how they show you because they're excited to learn. That's powerful. Makes you want to get up and come to school the next day.
this they have a YouTube channel called Multiage Learning, and they have many videos. So, of course, there are some negative drawbacks, and so some of these negative drawbacks, new students coming in, brand new to the school, they might be receiving the same curriculum twice, depending on when they're coming in. Same students or the same parents, you would get the same teacher for like 2 years in a row. So if you didn't have a really good relationship with a particular staff member, or if there's students in that grade that you're not really, there was issues with, that you might have to stay with them for 2 years, not just 1 year. And so there could be definitely a drawback there. Teachers will require more training and information. That's on my part, that I would like to make the decision soon so that I can start training my staff for next year. But, and of course with something new, are they going to get it right away? No, they'll take some time to learn and get their feet wet and to really dive in. May take, and so that's why it's going to take a bit of time to feel comfortable. The one teacher I talked to, that she does multi-age, and when she first did it, it took her about a year to really understand and how to apply everything. And by the second year, she was much more comfortable with how to do everything. So the recap, so why do it? Makes the school better because of with better teachers. So the way we teach this, the way we should be doing it, it's going to make us a school because we'll have better teachers, much more educated, being able to have kids retain more information, to be able to develop the skills as they need to. We do split classes from time to time as a response to something, low enrollment, social issues between classmates, instead of planning for the future. So, planning for the future, I don't want to do the split classes anymore. I really don't. The research supports it. It's beneficial for our demographics. So the fact that we have our population that's in this school, well, we see that there is a huge spectrum of ability, a huge range of ability, and therefore it's beneficial for the school and for the students. So what are my reasons? So unlike this principal that I talked to, her philosophy is that she believes in, she would love to turn every school into a multi-age school. The reason why I'm doing it, because I see a problem and I found a solution to it. And it's a problem that Our Lady of Victory's had for a long time. Some of our school board members have been on the school board for the last 20 years. And even them, way back in the day, they didn't like split classes, but they had to do it because of low enrollment. I have no problem doing the multi-age. Why? Because the research says, there was a ton of research in the 80s and 90s. You don't see really any research now because it was all proven, it was done. It was scientifically shown that, yeah, kids do just the same. Kids can do really well in this. If you have a spectrum of ability, you should do this. The Manitoba government supports it. And it's not for my legacy. Some people say, well, Gerald, you're trying to do it as a legacy. This is what you're going to leave behind, Our Lady of Victory, that you started that. And we're going to be a trending school. No other Catholic school is going all multi-age. And that's not my purpose. And once again, I see a problem and I found a solution for it. And it's what's best for the school, or it's best for the students and then the school. I do this primarily for the students. I see that the students are struggling. I think this is a great way to get things back on track, to help kids so that year to year they're at grade level or getting better, not just staying below grade level, and when they graduate they're still below grade level. So final thoughts and questions. So this is not once again a new age or a new cutting edge teaching practices. They did this. Canada's had single school classrooms for centuries, up until probably at least the 50s and 60s in rural Manitoba for sure, until the population increased, in which they realized that they could do single grades. But for centuries they did. The United States didn't stop doing it. It was 1830 when the population increased enough so that they started breaking into single grade. But even up until then, it still it was a popular belief, and it worked well. Students don't learn the same as when they went to school, and that's the idea. There are a lot of people who think that Catholic school, we're going to give you discipline, and we're going to make you guys academically strong. But the difference is, back in the day, they could hit the kids. I have a strap from one of the nuns, and you know, we used to hit the kids. You could whip them into shape behavior-wise, but now we can't. We can only talk to them, and so that, you know, there's a big difference there, and that's like a cultural difference that people have to learn. Students don't learn the same. You know, in the 50s and 60s, yeah, sure, you could sit in the seats. You sat there quietly, listened to somebody talk for 30 minutes. That's not the case. Majority of students are not independent learners. They can't read a book, understand it, and do work on it. Don't learn by teachers just talking at them anymore. They need to be active. They need to discover things. They need to ask questions and find the answers to it. They don't sit still for long periods of time. Somebody, and this is a feeling, nothing to do with research, but TV shows are 30 minutes long. Kids have a 30-minute attention span. And even if you think about commercials, they probably have like a 15-minute or a 10-minute span in which you have their attention for only a small period of time before they start daydreaming, zoning out, or just altogether like tuning out. And the research shows that there's a better way to do things. And so, as I showed you in the chart before, that there are better ways to do things. You know, lecturing, kids will remember 5% of that. And if you really want them, if you want them to retain more information, to take that information to the next grade, or take it to them in life in general, all the skills they learn, we have to do it a different way. And so, in this multi-age classroom, we would be forced to do it that way. So at this point, do you have any questions?